17 of the fantasy baseball season, and with the trade deadline approaching any day now for most fantasy leagues, here's a few hitters I look to sell and trade this week. The first guy, Francisco Lindor of the New York Mets. So what a great bounce-back season it's been for Lindor with this Met team, no doubt about it. 20 home runs, 79 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, 71 runs scored, a 268 average, and a 344 on base. But over the last month of the season, he's been smoking hot. 5 home runs, 19 RBIs, 21 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 365 average, and a 441 on base. So right now, he's playing out of his mind, is Lindor. And over the last 2 weeks, he's hitting 400 as well. But I just don't think he's going to keep it up at this torrid pace. I know the home runs and RBIs are great, especially 79 RBIs for obviously a shortstop, which is the weakest position in fantasy baseball. But I think you could get a lot for him in a big trade. He is Francisco Lindor. And also, he's a guy that throughout the last few seasons here, he's a very streaky player, and right now he's one of the best hot streaks of his career. He is Lindor. So the last few games for him: August 3rd at Washington, 1-for-3 with a run. August 4th versus Atlanta, 0-for-2 with a run. August 5th versus Atlanta, 2-for-5 a run. August 6th versus Atlanta in the doubleheader, 4-for-7, 3 runs, 3 RBIs. August 7th versus Atlanta, 2-for-4 run. August 8th versus Cincinnati, 0-for-3 with a run and a stolen base. And August 9th versus Cincinnati, 1-for-4 with a homer and 2 RBIs. So right now, he's playing great baseball with Francisco Lindor, no doubt about it. But he's a guy that it seems like he gets his RBIs in a couple weeks span, and then he disappears again for a few weeks. He's just not as consistent. But right now, no doubt about it, he's having a way better season this year than last in his second season with the New York Mets here. But right now, I think he's playing over his head a little bit here as Lindor. The average is definitely bumped up big time, where a couple weeks ago it was 240. Now it's 268. So if you could get a good hitter and a good pitcher in the deal, you do it. I'm not just going to sell him all for anything as Lindor. But right now, while he's at peak value, I believe, for himself this season, right before the deadline in fantasy leagues, this will be a perfect time to sell him high and get a good package from him. The next guy is Brandon Rogers of the Colorado Rockies. So this Rocky team, they're starting to hit the baseball pretty well here towards the last few weeks of the season. On the season here for Rogers, 10 homers, 52 RBIs, 57 runs scored, a 284 average, and a 334 on base. And over the last month, another guy with a crazy batting average, 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, 18 runs scored, a 375 average, and a 411 on base here for Brendan Rodgers. So right now he qualifies at 2 weak positions in fantasy baseball, second and short. But he's another guy. He's not going to keep up these monster numbers here with this high batting average, especially in the 370s over the last few weeks to a month here. The last few games here for him: August 3rd at the Padres, 1-for-4. August 5th at Arizona, 0-for-4 with a run. August 6th at Arizona, 0-for-4. August 7th at Arizona, 2-for-5 with a run. And August 9th versus the Cardinals in a 16-5 victory for the Rockies, 4-for-5, 3 runs scored, and an RBI in the season with these big numbers. And right in shortstop, a weak positions, like I said. And I think you get a decent starting pitcher towards the end of the season here in a deal for Rogers, especially a guy who can help your rotation as a 4th or 5th option right now while he's playing good. So I would definitely sell him high. The next guy's his teammate, Ryan McMahon. So Ryan McMahon, it's been a bad season for him, but over the last 2-3 weeks is where McMahon's finally stepped it up and got things going, and he qualifies at second and third. Good versatility in fantasy baseball, but on the season, still struggling. 11 home runs, 52 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, 43 runs scored, a 242 average, and a 339 on base. So last season, 23 and 86 for McMahon was with a 254 average. And there's no way he's going to reach that in home runs and RBIs unless he really goes nuts in the last month and a half of the season. But over the last month, he's been playing sound baseball. 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 9 runs scored, a 260 average, and a 382 on base. And over the last 2 weeks is where he's really put in the numbers. 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 5 runs scored, a 289 average, and a 404 on base. So McMahon, he's starting to find the home run groove with 3 home runs in the last 5 games here for him. August 2nd at San Diego in a doubleheader, 4-for-8 with an RBI, a stolen base. August 4th at San Diego, 2-for-3, a homer, 5 RBIs. August 6th at Arizona, 1-for-3 with a homer. August 7th at Arizona, 1-for-4 with a run. And August 9th versus St. Louis, 1-for-4 a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. So right now he's playing great baseball as McMahon. He's starting to find the power stroke. But where's this been the first 3-4 months of the season, where now he's starting to wake up and get things going? And that's why I'm not going to trust Ryan McMahon here as a guy. I'm going to hold on to the remainder of the season. Right now he's still available on the waiver wire as well in 37% of fantasy leagues. So right now, while he's playing good baseball as McMahon, he's a perfect sell high candidate, and I think you could get a decent starting pitcher in a deal as well. The whole thing is he's playing a weak second base position he qualifies at, and owners, they're going to need second basemen down the stretch here, and Ryan McMahon would be a decent get for a fantasy owner, but I just don't see him continuing to put up these numbers. The next guy is Jeff McNeil of the New York Mets. So this Met team, it's been a great 10 to 14 days here for them, beating the Braves 4 out of 5, and they've just been hitting and pitching great baseball is this team. But I just don't see it holding up, especially at these levels. On the season for McNeil, only 7 home runs, 44 RBIs, 48 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, 306 average, and a 362 on base. So the thing with McNeil here, the only thing he's really giving you is batting average and on base. Everything else is mediocre numbers this season. Last 2 weeks here for him, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, 9 runs scored, a 382 average, and a 404 on base. So McNeil's another guy who goes through peaks and valleys throughout the season, where he'll have a big week or two where he'll hit 400, and then he'll struggle and do nothing like we saw early in the month of July all the way to beginning of August. But he's picked it up of late here, and that's why I would sell him high as well. Qualifies at second and outfield, and right now a lot of people are looking for second basemen, where it's one of the weakest positions in fantasy. August 3rd at Washington, 3 for 5 with a run. August 4th versus Atlanta, 1 for 4. August 5th versus Atlanta, 2 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. August 6th versus Atlanta, 2 for 5. August 7th versus Atlanta, 1 for 4 with a run. August 8th versus Cincinnati, 1 for 3 with a run. And August 9th versus Cincinnati, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs. So he showed some power with 2 home runs in the last 5 games here is Jeff McNeil. But like I said, I don't think he's going to keep this up, this batting average this high. And he's another guy who's inconsistent. There's weeks he'll have huge hitting weeks, and weeks he won't do much. And only 44 RBIs on the season just isn't going to cut it. So he's a guy I definitely would sell high, and you could get a good starter in a deal. Or if you want to go a different direction and get a good power hitter, if someone wants more average, that's another deal fantasy owners can make as well. On the final hitter I look to sell and trade this week's Anthony Santander of the Baltimore Orioles. So Santander, he's definitely having a bounce-back season this year in Baltimore. 20 home runs, 60 RBIs, 51 runs scored, a 262 average, and a 342 on base. But over the last few weeks here, he's been on a tear. 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 385 average, and a 439 on base. So we know Santander throughout his career, he's a good power hitter, but he's a guy that's not going to have a high batting average. And right now, he's playing way over his head in that category. August 1st at Texas, 1 for 4 with a rib. August 2nd at Texas, 2 for 4 an RBI. August 3rd at Texas, 1 for 5 a run and an RBI. August 5th versus Pittsburgh, 1 for 4 with a run. August 6th versus Pittsburgh, 1 for 5. August 7th versus Pittsburgh, 0 for 4. August 8th versus Toronto, 2 for 3 with a homer in that one. And August 9th versus Toronto, 2 for 3 with a run. So this Oriole team, they played good baseball this season, way better than they have in many years, hovering around 500 this year, especially in a tough AL East. So right now, Santander's playing good baseball. Batting average is way up there, 330 in the last month and 385 in the last 2 weeks. But he's just another guy that I don't see keeping it up, especially in the batting average. Yes, the power, he'll probably finish with 28, 30 home runs this season here. But while he's playing great baseball, he's a perfect sell-high candidate. So that's a few hitters I look to sell and trade here right before most trade deadlines in the fantasy baseball leagues here within the next few days for Week 17 of the season.